For the most part, I think the new Disclosure Day movie is director Steven Spielberg returning to the kind of sci-fi filmmaking that made him so great. It feels like classic Spielberg without ever becoming a nostalgia trip, and I think it's a film that will get even better over time. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you my extended thoughts on the new Disclosure Day movie, discussing why I think the film is mostly successful in delivering something truly Spielberg, yet also fresh. There will be spoilers from the film throughout, so if you haven't seen it yet, then I'd recommend doing so before watching my review. Before I get into it though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my content surrounding the latest theatrical releases like Disclosure Day, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into my review of Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day. So the first thing that hits you while watching Disclosure Day is the feeling that Spielberg has finally circled back to the version of his directing that shaped an entire generation of film. Now, I've mostly enjoyed some of his recent films, but they never quite tapped into that specific narrative magic or even filmmaking that he brought to his older work, specifically his iconic sci-fi. Movies like E.T. and Close Encounters had this curious, almost childlike sense of wonder mixed with genuine fear of the unknown. They felt intimate and cosmic all at the same time. Disclosure Day is the first time in years where that tone feels like it's resurfaced, not just as nostalgia, but as a living, breathing creative spark. It feels like Spielberg rediscovering a part of his voice he hadn't used in decades and doing it with the confidence of someone who spent a lifetime mastering his craft. And what makes this return striking to me is that Disclosure Day doesn't just try to imitate that. Spielberg isn't trying to recreate Close Encounters beat for beat, nor is he leaning on the sentimental glow of E.T. Instead, he takes the emotional DNA of those films in the awe, the fear, and the human vulnerability and pushes it into a modern, tense, and fractured world. The tone is familiar, yes, but the storytelling is more anxious and more attuned to the way people live today. It's Spielberg acknowledging that the world has changed, just like the character of Noah at the very end of Disclosure Day, and it's that sense of filmmaking wonder itself that has changed with it. The result is a film that feels both classic and contemporary, like the director stitching together two eras of his filmmaking into something that stands on its own. A big part of this feeling comes from how Spielberg frames the unknown. In his earlier sci-fi films, the mystery of extraterrestrial life was something to reach toward in being something beautiful and transformative. In Disclosure Day, that mystery is still awe-inspiring, but it's also heavier and more complicated. The director treats the unknown not as a simple revelation, but as a force that collides with human fear, politics, and paranoia. But again, he never loses that spark of curiosity throughout. Even in the film's darkest moments, you can feel him nudging the audience to look up or wonder what's out there, and it's that balance in the tension between fear and fascination that makes the movie feel more like vintage Spielberg without ever becoming a complete throwback. The spectacle in Disclosure Day isn't just noise, as it's tied to emotion, to theme, and to the human experience. And I think that Spielberg has always been at his best when he uses the extraordinary to reveal something true about ordinary people. For me, what primarily makes Disclosure Day an engrossing story is the way Spielberg builds tension from two directions at once. He does so through the cosmic mystery of alien contact and the deeply human unraveling of the people caught in between. The film doesn't rush to reveal some of its secrets as it lets the story tighten around the characters, pulling you deeper into the conspiracy, the fear, and the emotional stakes. Spielberg has always been a master of perspective, showing the extraordinary through the eyes of ordinary people. And it's through this where he's able to use that skill to create a narrative that feels both intimate and massive all at the same time. You're not just watching a global disclosure event unfold, you're experiencing it all through characters who barely understand what's happening to them, which makes every revelation and moment hit harder. The story becomes especially gripping once the film leans into its central mystery in the existence of two activated individuals whose minds have been altered by alien technology. Daniel's theft of the classified Cortex files is already a strong hook for the film, but then it becomes even more compelling when Margaret's transformation begins. Her sudden loss of language on live television, shifting from English to Russian to Korean before collapsing into alien clicks, is one of the film's most unsettling moments, and it's the turning point where the story stops being a conspiracy thriller and becomes something stranger and more ambitious. Spielberg uses moments like this not just for shock value, but to show how fragile human identity becomes when confronted with something beyond comprehension. And as the story then progresses, the film reveals that Daniel and Margaret aren't random victims, as they're part of a decades-long extraterrestrial plan. The idea that they are twin forces, two halves of a biological equation engineered since childhood, gives the narrative a sense of mythic weight. It reframes all the chases, the secrecy, the psychic devices, and even the government panic. So this story isn't just about hiding the truth, it's about what humanity does when the truth is encoded inside two people who never asked for it. Spielberg uses this revelation to shift the film from a thriller into a character-driven odyssey, where the emotional stakes matter just as much as the cosmic. And I think the story's momentum picks up more towards the final act of Disclosure Day, where Daniel and Margaret attempt to broadcast the alien message to the whole world. The desperate takeover of the Kansas City TV station, followed by Cortex shutting down the entire power grid, is Spielberg delivering some of his most suspenseful work in years. And what I think makes this climax really resonate is actually the part that I've seen a few people complain about online. What I'm speaking about is the quiet moment that ends the film as Daniel whispers the translated alien message into Margaret's ear, and Margaret then delivers in a single word to humanity before the screen cuts to black. It's a very bold storytelling choice, and I think it leaves the audience with emotional impact rather than a literal explanation. Spielberg trusts the viewer to feel the meaning of the ending rather than spelling it out to them, and that restraint is part of what makes this story linger long after the credits roll. Given that the entire film unfolds with humanity seconds away from World War III, I think the meaning of the whisper isn't a prophecy or a threat, and in fact, I think it's a plea. The aliens are essentially urging humanity to step back from the brink, to understand and listen that the universe is unimaginably old, fragile, and interconnected, far bigger than our conflicts, borders, and our fear of the unknown. And I think this frames Margaret's final word with narrative impact. The word listen is not just a command, it's a warning and a reminder that humanity can't keep shouting, escalating, and drowning itself in noise. So Disclosure Day is a story about connection, identity, and the terrifying beauty of confronting something bigger than ourselves. Spielberg blends mystery, emotion, and cosmic scale into a narrative that feels alive, unpredictable, and deeply human. It's the kind of story that pulls you in scene by scene, not because of its size, but because of how personally it hits the characters at the very centre. What I think further elevates Disclosure Day is a confident return for Spielberg to mostly solid filmmaking. The camera movements he uses have purpose, and every transition between scenes is designed to keep the audience emotionally tethered to the characters. Spielberg blends practical effects, grounded environments, and modern digital techniques in a way that works for the scenes presented. Whether it's the Kansas City broadcast meltdown, the forest cabin sequence, or the uncanny flashback with the animal-disguised aliens, each of these moments is shot with a mix of intimacy and spectacle. Spielberg knows when to pull the camera close to capture a trembling breath, and when to pull back to let the scale of the moment swallow the character's whole. It's a balancing act that he's always done a good job at, and here it feels sharper than it has in many years. And visually, I think the film is also quite strong. It's never overly showy, and the lighting choices by Spielberg, whether it's harsh fluorescence in the Cortex labs, warm natural tones in the cabin, or eerie blues and reds during the alien-infused sequences, they give each location its own identity. The sound design is equally impressive, whether it be in the alien clicking language, the distortion of human voices, or the low-frequency hum that creeps into scenes when the diving devices are activated. Spielberg has always understood that sci-fi isn't just about what you see, that it's about what you feel as well. And again, for the most part, I think he delivered, making it an experience that is worthy of the theatrical. When it comes to the few negatives I have with the film, I will say that the filmmaking isn't always flawless in certain departments. For one, when it comes to the first act of the movie, while it is mostly intriguing, it does take a little too long to find its rhythm. Spielberg is clearly setting up a lot of the moving pieces at the start in Daniel's theft, Margaret's activation, and Wardex's surveillance, but the pacing in these early scenes can feel slightly uneven. There's also no denying that the film's length becomes noticeable in some places too. A few sequences in the movie linger longer than they need to, and I think some viewers may feel the weight of the runtime during the quieter stretches. And while I personally love that the ending links to the World War III commentary in the film, I do think that the movie should have integrated the early mentions of that a bit better. I think that would have helped the overall reaction to the ending and given the film that extra layer of thematic depth. All of these issues don't necessarily derail the film, but they do keep it from being as tight and propulsive as it could have been. Even with these minor drawbacks though, I do think that Disclosure Day stands out as being one of Spielberg's most confidently crafted films in years. It's visually bold, emotionally rich, and directed with the kind of clarity and purpose that only a filmmaker of his experience could deliver. So when you step back and look at Disclosure Day as a whole, what makes it a solid film is how confidently it brings all of its pieces together. Whether that be the emotional storytelling, the grounded characters, the unnerving mystery, or Spielberg's unmistakable sense of cinematic scale. It's a movie that feels big without losing its humanity, strange without losing its clarity, and ambitious without losing its emotional anchor. The director isn't just revisiting the genre or tricks that made him a household name, he's shaping them into something that speaks to the anxieties and hopes of right now. That blend of old school wonder and modern tension gives the film a tone that's rare in today's sci-fi landscape. The story doesn't shy away from a level of complexity either, and it explores memory, identity, communication, and the terrifying possibility that humanity might not be ready for the truth it claims to want. But on top of this, Spielberg never lets the themes overwhelm his characters. Daniel and Margaret's journey remains the emotional spine of this film, and their connection gives the cosmic stakes real weight. By the time the final broadcast sequence arrives, the film has earned every moment of its tension, every moment of awe, and every moment of quiet devastation. And then long after the credits roll, I found myself thinking about the alien message and about the way Spielberg frames humanity as both fragile and capable of extraordinary understanding. It's the kind of sci-fi that invites conversation not because it's too confusing, but because it's rich, yet focused in its approach to its subject. And it trusts the audience enough to sit with the unanswered questions. So even with an uneven first act and the occasional sense of length, Disclosure Day is Spielberg delivering a new sci-fi film that's visually bold, emotionally resonant, and thematically ambitious. But that was my video giving you my extended thoughts on Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day. If you've seen the film, then let me know down below in the comment section what you thought towards it and where you would rank it alongside the director's greatest films. For much more videos and breakdowns, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, rating, and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.